We did not interact often. But when we did, it was brief but intense. What I mean by that is that sometimes few words can be very intense just because of what you built, how we had built up this friendship. Me making art, her before that, you know, just by her liking a picture once is intense. You know, it's like if Taylor Swift likes someone's picture once, you know, that's a big deal for some people. So as you know, and you know, I'm not going to get into the whole notion of celebrityness and who is worthy of more celebrity. The bottom line is I entertained how I was interested in her, regardless of who's more of a celebrity, who has more followers, or who's more popular. It doesn't matter. I had a gentle sense that I liked Jeanett, and I was casual about it. And when she started liking my pictures, and I would like her pictures, and then I sent her a message once for the first time, and she answered it. Those small little things were intense because it created a beginning that kept growing in a small way, but every time it grew a little bit, it was a big deal because I think we both knew that maybe something's going on here. So every time, when we did interact, it was brief but intense. When she said we could meet, it did not mean it was time to put the town of Oda under a microscope. Once again, I knew enough to care about learning more about Jeanett. Once again, I knew enough to care about learning more about Jeanett, but I wasn't going to get carried away. Just because she said she could not, just because she said we could meet, did not mean all the time I had taken to learn about the other places in Norway that I had visited and learned so much about, I was going to lose sight of those places and the focus that I had on those. Like I've explained, you know, those places were always important to me. So, you know, again, I'm just showing that I wasn't just, yeah, I was all in for making the tiles of Jeanett and giving them to her, but I wasn't like, you know, I mean, it's give and take, you know. I'm interested in learning about her community once I know where it is, once I know she's still interested in me. You know, if Jeanett had stopped communicating with me altogether, and I had learned about Oda, I'm sure I would have continued to learn about Oda a little bit. You know, other things end up happening when I make my trips to Norway. Maybe I would have eventually swung through Oda and checked it out. But the fact of the matter is Jeanett remained friends with me, and I made the tiles, and I slowly started to show more interest in Oda. Well, wow, Jeanett is willing to meet. And that was very exciting to hear. Once I arrived in Trondheim, I sent her the message in March 2018, and she wanted to meet, as I've talked about. Since I knew well enough not to get started in conversations over instant messenger, the few messages that we sent to each other, like I said, were intense. They were intense. They must have been mutually intense because we both must have known something special's happening here, and we're cradling it and candling it, and every time it seems to be growing. It's exciting, it's intense, it's uncertain. And although our friendship was in the infancy, each time I decided to send Jeanett a message, it was a vital question for the growth of our friendship, and she responded with each message I sent. I learned to act this way because I did not want to lose any of these friendships. I did not want to lose this thing I had going with Jeanett. And I knew that I just needed to be gentle, but it kept growing. Even though our occasional messages were very limited, opposed to what I see other people, how many times they send text messages. Since it was only a very occasional time when we sent a message, it was intense. It must have been exciting for both of us. It was exciting for me. I was not a whiny, crying baby who sent Jeanett mundane questions because I needed to make sure she had my attention. I wasn't sending Jeanett questions like that just to see if she would respond back because I needed to see that she was interested in me still. No, I had a business I was running. The times when I communicated to her were essential for me to know that she was still interested in me. I let my feelings hang up to that moment when I would send her those messages, and I wouldn't let anything happen that would further my interest in Jeanett unless she would answer those questions. And there must have been a feeling that made her feel comfortable. That was a result of this way of me thinking, this way of me communicating with her. She must have had this feeling that I emanated that gave her the sense like, okay, this guy's got something different. He's not overwhelming me. He's slowly taking this on. He's showing me he's interested in me in a way in which I can handle. I only sent her messages when I absolutely needed to know something so that I knew what I was getting myself into and to make sure I knew Jeanett was involving herself with me at a basic level. You know, if she was going to blow me off or you know, I was showing her respect. And by the way I was communicating with her once we made that initial contact, 2 years probably, close to 2 years before we met, you know, I wasn't gonna continue. I wasn't gonna make details of her if I sensed that this person was blowing me off, was playing games. I had been through that too much. I wasn't worth it. It's a waste of time if I had sensed that. So I never bothered to ask Jeanett if she lived in Oda. Because it didn't matter at that time. It didn't matter to me if she lived in Oda or not. I'm making these tiles of her. I like her pictures a lot. I can sense her personality. Again, I don't even know if she lives in Oda. There are people in Sutton's Bay that say they live in Traverse City just because it's like a central hub. Jeanett could have lived in Utna, 30 minutes away from Oda, and just said she lived in Oda because that was like where the center of activity is if you live in Utna. I wasn't even in Norway yet. So I never bothered to ask Jeanett if she lived in Oda because it didn't matter at the time. And I wasn't even in Norway yet. I was still in Michigan. And I had no reason to believe she was going to continue communicating with me once I arrived in Norway, which was when I planned to ask her about a time and date to meet. I wasn't going to risk the friendship by asking her questions that didn't matter. It didn't really matter. As I had learned from other women I had tried to become friends with. However, I did wonder where she lived, and I did question the possibility that she might not live in Oda, but was merely using that town as her general location, and that would make this would make a difference if I was going to try to learn about where she lived. If I was going to go to Oda and meet Jeanett, then isn't it vital that I know she actually lived there, as I've explained? You know, how could I plan a trip to Oda if Jeanett didn't actually live there? I could do this because I had to be relaxed about this endeavor. I couldn't let my nerves become jeopardized and wrapped up with important. But at the infancy of our friendship, I knew better than to send her mundane questions that could be viewed by her as me being needy. Our friendship already had been established, we already had an established pace and comfort, longevity, and progression that worked, as I have explained with me liking her pictures and slowly feeling comfortable after she likes pictures of me. I like pictures of her over months, over almost a couple of years. I'm like, hey, there's something here. She likes my pictures. I'm going to ask her. She liked even some of the tiles I made at some point before I made the tiles of her. At one point, I was like, all right, I'm in Norway in September 2018. I'm in Stamsund in a fishing village. Hey, Jeanett, can I carve a tile of you? And she said yes. So I carved it. Slow progression. Our friendship already had been we had an established pace and comfort, longevity, and prosperity. I wasn't going to send her mundane questions, you know, just to see if she was interested in me or to see if she was going to say something back. After